In your work as a CFWS social worker, have you had any cases in which children were able to be returned home to the parent?
Yes.
And do you have any idea what percentage that would be in which return home is successful?
Are you referring to cases that I've supervised or cases that I was assigned as a social worker for?
I'm sorry.
Overall, I would say 60%.
Have there been cases in which the department has asked the court to terminate parental rights?
Yes.
And what percentage would you say there are where the department has asked the court to terminate parental rights? Understanding that there's some cases that probably haven't reached that point yet.
I'd say maybe 50% where the department has asked for the court to work towards a plan of termination.
Okay, let me, I want to make sure I'm asking this question clearly. So, because 60% and 50% adds up to 110.
Correct.
So I'm a little confused. So
explain a little more in detail for this, where my mind was going.
Gotcha.
There have been cases where the department has objected to a return home. The court has ordered otherwise.
All right, let me see if I can ask some clarifying questions. So you said about 60% of the cases you have worked on as a social worker or supervisor have resulted in return home. Is that right?
Yes, for cases that are reaching the point where a permanent plan needs to be achieved. With the consideration of cases, we're still navigating the case plan and we haven't reached that federal time of 15 months. You know, we're still working on the case plan. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily asking for termination at that point for those cases where we've objected to a return home. This is a little complicated for me to answer.
Sounds to me like you're figuring out a number of complicated factors, but
yes.
But I would like you to answer a very simple question. Of the cases that you have worked on as a supervisor or social worker, what percentage of them have resulted in children being returned home to their parents?
For cases that have achieved permanency, approximately 50%.
Now, when you say cases that have achieved permanency, is that the same thing as children were returned home to the parents, or does it mean something different?
Children who have returned home to their parents or being adopted or placed in a guardianship. Overall, with those cases that have achieved a permanent plan out of those three options, I would say 50% have been a return home to parent.
Okay, so you're saying of the cases where a permanency plan has been achieved, 50% has been returned home, 50% has been something else.
Yes.
And when is permanency achieved when the case is dismissed, or is it achieved, how is permanency achieved in your?
In my view, it's either when the case is dismissed from a return home, a case is dismissed when a guardianship has been established, or a case has been transferred to our legally free adoptions unit for it to move towards an adoption.
There are some cases, it sounds like, if I'm correct, there are cases where children have been returned home to the parent. The case hasn't been dismissed yet. Is that right?
Are you referring to cases that have a trial return home underway?
And would those be additional cases beyond the ones you've referred to before where permanency was achieved?
Yes.
What percentage of your cases would you say are in a state where return home to the parent has been attained, but dismissal has not yet been attained? Of all of the cases that you have supervised or handled as a social worker yourself, can you tell me what percentage of those cases has the department filed a termination petition?
Okay, so at this moment, off the top of my head, out of approximately 50 children that I supervise amongst families. There are about 8 that are in a trial return home currently.
How do you decide whether to file a termination petition or return home?
When looking at the parental deficiencies on a case, the court has ordered services, right, to remediate those deficiencies. For me, it's not a matter of whether the parent is complying with the service, but if we're seeing progress in those deficiencies being remediated, which a lot does go into complying with services that have been determined to be necessary. However, I know in consideration for substance use, for example, you could have a parent that has been able to obtain sobriety without having to go to treatment. However, I believe statistically treatment is a better option, but it can happen.
Pardon me. Let me follow up on one issue there. You said that it's possible for a parent to obtain sobriety without doing treatment.
If a parent was indicating that they were sober, but they didn't complete a recommended treatment program, I believe we would assess this based off of completed UAs that are objectively telling us if a parent is sober or not. So when I'm thinking of treatment, I'm thinking about IOP or inpatient detox, the longer term treatment programs that we typically refer our clients or parents to.
To verify, how does the department verify that a person is actually maintaining their sobriety if they're not engaged in treatment?
In order for me to make that assessment, that includes my engagement and communication with a parent to assess their overall functioning, which includes going to their home, collateral contacts, the resources and supports they're connected with. Those are all the things that I'm looking at.
And let me ask you, just in sort of a general way, and I apologize, pardon me 1 second, because we're discussing you referred to attaining different types of permanency. So can you describe your training and education around permanency planning, what it is, what goes into it, why it's important?
Sure. So permanency planning, we look at identifying a permanent plan to be achieved at least within 12 to 15 months, or at most, I should say, within 12 to 15 months on a case, if not sooner, if we're able to. So that is typically what I'm looking at in terms of a timeline to achieve permanency.
And when you say 12 to 15 months, is that 12 to 15 months since the child was removed from the home?
Yes.
And where does that 12 to 15 months come?
It goes from federal guidelines and state guidelines for children to achieve permanency in child welfare cases.
And can you explain what you mean by permanency?
Child is able to be in a legal arrangement with a safe and protective caregiver long term.
So that would include return home to their legal parent, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and it could also include other alternate placement with alternate individuals under some sort of legal framework like adoption or guardianship?
Yes.
Now, you said that there are state and federal guidelines for the time during which that is supposed to be achieved. But in terms of your training and education as a social worker, why is obtaining permanency something that is important for a child?
Because children deserve to have stability and permanence from an adult caregiver. They deserve to have safety and to have someone be able to meet their physical, emotional, developmental needs from an adult caregiver.
And is that lack of permanency, is that harmful to a child in some way? For instance, if they're with a foster parent for year after year after year, is there some harm to them from that you're aware of?
I think being in a state of limbo, I guess you can call it, can be confusing and distressful to children.
Okay, let me ask you about Amaya's case here in specific. And I'm not going to ask you as many questions as I asked Mr. Camp, but I do need to cover some ground. So first, since you've been assigned to the case, has Ms. Zayas ever asked you for Amaya to be placed back with her?
I can't remember any instances of being asked, but rather demanded to return Amaya home.
And while you've been assigned to the case, has Ms. Zayas made any motions before the court to have Amaya returned to her?
No.
And Judge Ramsar has obtained jurisdiction over the dependency case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Since you've been assigned, have you gone to hearings before Judge Ramsar?
Yes.
And has Ms. Zayas attended those hearings?
Yes.
Has Ms. Zayas had the opportunity to present motions to Judge Ramsar at those hearings?
Yes.
While you have been assigned to the case, has Ms. Zayas maintained regular contact with you?
Majority means being through emails and text messages. There have been some phone calls. I've been out to her home. I want to say approximately 5 times. We've had a few shared planning meetings where we've talked about solutions to her case and working towards reunification of Amaya. Yeah, those are the different types of communications we've had.
Okay, and there was also a discussion of, pardon me, previously with Mr. Camp, there was a discussion of sending service letters to Ms. Zayas. Have you done so?
Yes.
And have you, when you were supervising Ms. Hake, did she also send service letters?
Yes.
Did those service letters contain contact information for the department if Ms. Zayas wanted to contact?
Yes, and I believe they also contained her attorney's contact information on there as well, when she did have an attorney.
How many attorneys did she have while you have been assigned to the case?
I believe she has only had one since I was assigned that I can remember.
Do you remember who that was?
Daewoo Kim. There were a total of 3 motions filed for her to represent herself pro se. And the first 2 were denied, and I believe Judge Ferguson granted the 3rd, in which the department objected to.
Would you say that you've had a normal amount of parent contact with Ms. Zayas?
I'd say there's been more. I received contact from Ms. Zayas at least once a day. Now, whether those contacts render a response, most of the time it doesn't, because there's a lot of venting from Ms. Zayas about her position with the case rather than her asking a direct question of me. Yes, when I'm receiving a lot of the hostility in her position on the case, I do try and provide reassurance and empathy to her that our goal in this case is to not blame or shame her, but rather work with her so we can return Amaya home, that I'm not here to judge her. in an effort to try and have her work with me rather than be.
Let me ask you then, you heard the testimony from Mother's Counsel Cynthia Diabach earlier in the trial that what Ms. Zayas needed was to be treated by social workers in a way that understood her trauma and her PTSD. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Did Ms. Zayas report having a prior diagnosis of PTSD?
She herself did not report this to me, but I do remember reading it in a prior neuropsychological evaluation that she self-reported having PTSD, although it wasn't a diagnosis that was given in that assessment. I believe it was actually ruled out.
When you say you recall reading in a prior evaluation of Ms. Zayas, was that an evaluation that was done at THS? It'll probably be quicker if she just looks at it. Okay. I would have to go through some hoops to mark it as an exhibit. Okay. I haven't. So if you had understood that Ms. Zayas, if it was your understanding that Ms. Zayas had been previously diagnosed with PTSD, would you have communicated differently with Ms. Zayas or done anything else differently in the case? And what have you done to try to communicate that understanding to Ms. Zayas? I'm sorry, did you say empathetic way? While you have been assigned to the case, or supervising the case, apologize, let me restate that. While you have been assigned to the case directly, have you attempted to engage Ms. Zayas in service? Have those methods of attempting to work with her been successful? Were there any services that weren't court-ordered that you offered to Ms. Zayas? Were you assigned to the case when the FCAP was ordered?
Yes.
Did you discuss with Ms. Zayas doing the FCAP voluntarily? Did she state why she was not in agreement, if you recall? So the department set a motion for Judge, Mamzar to order that FCAP, is that right?
Yes.
And the judge did order the FCAP?
Yes.
After the FCAP was ordered, was there a discussion between yourself and the mother and any other involved parties about continuing the termination trial for her to follow the recommendations of the FCAP?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that? Why was that being considered by the department? Did Ms. Zayas agree to do that?
No, she did not.
Did Ms. Zayas ever ask you for any services other than the ones that had been ordered by the court, recommended by Dr. Tutty, recommended by FCAP? And can you explain what you mean you did give her resources for that? And that was specifically as to Anya, that wasn't a service related to Amaya?
Yes.
Did Ms. Zayas ever ask for any services that related to Amaya?
No.
Sorry, give me just one moment because I want to ask you some questions about Anya. First of all, did the department ever file a dependency petition on Anya?
No.
And so I want to go over a little bit about the process resulted in Anya the department not filing on Anya. But let me approach it this way. So you've heard Ms. Zayas state during this trial that because she has Anya in her care, that proves that she can parent Amaya. Does the department agree with that?
No.
Can you explain why?
No.
It was
the neuropsychological evaluation that was completed by Dr. Paul Connor in the prior dependency of Amaya.
And I'm sorry, can you clarify whether it was a rule-out diagnosis Or are you just using the colloquial term that the diagnosis was ruled out as in he considered it and found she didn't have it? Because rule out, to me, means it should be considered but hasn't been fully diagnosed. That's the term rule out means that.
If I can pull it up, I can tell you
Okay.
exactly
Thank
what
you.
it says. That's okay.
Yeah, because that's an important distinction.
Yeah. So in Dr. Paul Connor, in his diagnostic impression, it says rule out post-traumatic stress disorder. I feel that I am fully aware of the historical trauma that Ms. Zayas feels towards systematic involvement. I feel that this is something that I've been aware of since I first became involved with her and her family. Again, I think that all of my communication with her has been presented in a very empathetic way. You know,
Okay.
telling her that I understand that this system as a whole can be very scary to navigate. And I also understand that, her feelings are valid, that she feels she's been harmed by the system. However, reassuring her that I'm here, that I want to partner with her so that her child can come home. I don't know how else to really explain my engagement with her. It's just I've been trying to work with her, and I've just been met with extreme resistance. I have provided her with names of agencies that she can go to for services. I've explained to her how to access services such as UAs, breaking it down on who she needs to call, what the hours are that she needs to call in order to go in for a UA. I've offered to call providers with her, if that would be helpful. I have given her gas cards in order to try and remove any financial barriers that may be present in order for her to access services. I've even offered, I know that Dr. Tutty had recommended a neurological exam, and I offered for her to sign a release of information with her primary care provider so that I can communicate with them in order for a referral to be made, so that she wouldn't have to do it herself, because I know that a lot of these things have been stressful for her. There has just been an adamant no from her, that she does not want to do anything, as she has explained numerous times during this trial, that she will not do services. Yes, I can't recall if there was ever a reason stated. I think that her disagreement with it was parallel to her disagreement with all of the services that have been ordered in the case. Yes, because through FCAP's evaluation, they did offer recommendations that would potentially remediate some of the concerns that we've had as far as obtaining permanency. So in an effort to try and have reunification occur, we wanted to implement those recommendations that FCAP had in their assessment. We had a conversation one day about daycare for Anya, which I did give her resources for. Outside of that, no. Anya was placed on a VPA, voluntary placement agreement, whenever she was first born, because Miriam was experiencing, I can't remember the medical term, but she ended up needing to be hospitalized for, I believe it was a little over a week. So at that point, she agreed for a voluntary placement of Anya. which in turn resulted in a department intervention, right? So with that, she became eligible for what's called the Working Connections Program through DSHS, which is she would qualify for a year of daycare at no cost with a contracted daycare provider with the department. And I provided Ms. Zayas with information on how to access the Working Connections Program through DSHS for Anya. I think that Amaya is, with her developmental level, especially in current day, Amaya has become very aware of her mom and her mom's behavior. And it has become very distressing for Amaya. And Amaya has stated that she wishes her mom wouldn't become so mad in these settings, such as visits or doctor's appointments. I think Amaya is more aware of her mom's behavior than Anya is. Does that mean that I don't have concerns for Anya? No. I think there are concerns for Anya, and those concerns haven't risen to the level of department involvement. I think there is certainly risk, but at this point, there's not any reason for us to intervene. I've had conversations with Jody and what she's observing during visits and mom's behavior with Anya. And Jody, and I don't know if I can say this, but Jody has also indicated to me her concerns of Anya being in mom's care. Again, I don't think that those concerns are an active safety threat, but I do believe that there is some risk right now. Yes, Your Honor. I did receive a text message from her at 12:08. Would you like me to read it, what it says? The trial is over because I'm not there. Nice try, though. Have a nice life. I will never speak to you again in my entire life. You are now blocked. The CASA contacted that girl. She's not supposed to share my emails with anybody. That's not a part of the case. Big mistake. I will not be accepting your gas cards at all anymore. Nothing from you. No emails, nothing. Completely 100% blocked. The mother's assessment of Amaya being in her care. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, I think I can touch on it a little more. So again, I do think that Amaya's needs are more complex and more emotionally related than Anya's basic needs. I think that at this moment, Ms. Zayas is meeting Anya's basic needs, right? I think that in terms of Amaya's emotional capacity to steward her mom's behavior, that has been very difficult for her. Sorry, there's a siren in the background and I don't want that. To steward her behavior, like hold it for her, I guess I should say. That Amaya holds a lot of that responsibility for her mom's mental health and behavior that she's presenting. Yes, I'm trying to be able to articulate this to you. I think that she is more emotionally impacted herself from mom's behavior than Anya because of her developmental level and her age. I think she has some babbling and is able to make noises in order to voice her needs, but as far as saying full words, no. I think that these transitions Amaya has had to experience have been emotionally traumatizing. She has to go through these periods of unknown of where she may end up, which can be really difficult for her. I think that it happening a second time is even more telling with mom and her ability to remain consistent in managing her own mental health and being able to be consistent in medication management. And I think it's especially a problem with therapy. We did see engagement in that first dependency, but since the second dependency has started, she's been pretty adamant that she doesn't want to do any services, and she's not able to make any progress because she lacks insight into the impacts of her mental health on Amaya. Yes. And I'd also like to point out that we didn't receive any type of intake for Anya where mom had a safety threat as to Anya. Whereas with Amaya, we did have an active safety threat that rendered a dependency action. Not entirely. I think that there were consultations that I had with the team that was assigned on the front end, being CPS investigations. We had frequent staffings, and I gave them information on what was happening with Amaya's case. But ultimately, they make the decision on whether a dependency is filed for Anya, or if there were to be a dependency filed on Anya. Yeah. Again, because mom was able to provide for Anya's basic needs, and there was no active safety threats as to Anya. And mom was in fact being protective when she called CPS because she had no other adult to be able to care for Anya whenever she had to go to the hospital for her own medical care. Yeah, I think that with mom's behavior whenever Anya was born and the level of engagement she was showing during that time, there was certainly hope that we could continue on an upward path of her making progress because she was amenable to services during that time. She was participating with an in-home nurse, the doula. I believe she was also participating in Project Safe Care for the infant. It's a service where she was provided education to meet the medical needs of her infant child. And then I do believe during this time period, we had received 2 or 3 completed UAs. This was also the time period in which I was able to speak with Ms. Diabach about Ms. Zayas's compliance in therapy. And she was also participating in medication management at that point for her bipolar diagnosis. So I do feel that with everything that was occurring in that month and a half that we were involved with Anya, that there was hope that we would continue on an upward path of progress to where Amaya could eventually return home. And then in May, I can remember.
May what year, please?
May 2022.
Okay, thanks.
So I believe it was January, but if I can go back and just confirm, I can let you know if that's okay.
January 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
So Anya was born in September, and I believe in the period of time from about September, from when she was born till around the end of January, we were seeing this period of progress. And as I was saying, I can remember having a conversation in May with Miss Zayas where she had told me she had stopped going to counseling entirely, and she had also stopped taking all of her medication. I told her that it was, I had some concerns with it, that we saw a period of stability when she was involved in these services. I was met with a lot of the continued, just complete objection. I'm not going to do it. I'm done. I don't need the services. She doesn't need the medication. She was saying she didn't need the medication. She didn't need to go to counseling. although she was saying that she didn't need to go to counseling and she was objecting to counseling, she did tell me that Cynthia was actively reaching out to her despite her resistance to it. Yes, she had told me over the phone that she was qualified in both of those things. I did. I left her a message and I also sent her an email and I did not get any response back. Yes, visits have been consistent. The only times they haven't been consistent have been when there was a pre-planned vacation between Amaya and her foster parents where she would leave, but we had a plan to make up any visitations that were going to be missed. The only other time it hasn't been consistent is when Miss Zayas has fired the visitation provider, and I was unable to locate someone immediately to be able to facilitate ongoing visits, although those efforts were pretty active whenever I would lose a visit provider. I did also make efforts to have visits made up that didn't happen during those time periods. Ms. Zayas didn't want to have makeup visits because Amaya didn't want to have makeup visits, so she didn't agree to have them, although they were offered. When I first became the supervisor in September 2021, sorry, I'm trying to break it down in my head. I'd say 4 times, 2 of those being with Miss Davis, Jody, who has been willing to, after a period of time where they've had a break after Miss Zayas has fired her, Jody has been willing to pick the contract back up because we have seen where Miss Zayas will go through like a short-term episode of being really upset and hostile, and then we're able to work with her again because we know that she wants the visits. And there are times when she has a pretty good established relationship with Jody. But then there are other times where she can be very mean and hostile towards Jody, it mirrors the relationship that she's had with the department, or at least with myself. So she fired Jody a second time. Jody ended up dropping the visit contract for what I thought to be permanently. I didn't think I was going to be able to have her back on. I'm kind of going out of order. Let me start from the beginning for the first one out of the 4 times. So in September, at the end of 2021, she had a visit provider who I believe was named Seema. She ended up having some of the verbal behavior, negative verbal interactions with Seema. Seema dropped the contract. At that point, Jody came on board. Jody dropped the contract at one point for the same reasons. Jody picked it back up after a period of time where there was a break. Then most recently, about a month ago, Miriam threatened to file a lawsuit, or she said that she filed a lawsuit against Jody. And she also told Jody she had filed a restraining order. So at that point, Jody ended up dropping the visitation contract again. And then I had Barry assigned. She did the same thing to Barry, fired him and said that she was getting a restraining order. And then with me contacting Jody again, Jody has now became reassigned on the case. Very short periods of time, but yes, I haven't observed an entire visit, no, but I've reviewed visit reports. Yes, 3 up to 20 minutes of the visit. So I think historically, Ms. Zayas has made threats that she would leave with Amaya during visitation. And I think that goes along with her untreated mental health because she has not remained consistent in getting treatment for her mental health. That issue has not been remediated. Can you repeat the question? Sorry. Neglect. So parenting a child for 2 hours, 2 times a week, pretty different than parenting a child 24/7. obviously the periods of time are shorter. I think that Miriam is able to manage her mental health in that short period of time. I think in the long term, we would see that it becomes more apparent that she's not able to manage her behavior, which in turn impacts Amaya. I think Amaya needs consistency and stability, especially in regards to school attendance, maintaining a routine for school and daily living, getting to and from medical, dental, any therapy appointments if she were enrolled into therapy. Amaya has also thrived in extracurricular activities, and having a consistent bedtime. I don't think that at this moment, Ms. Zayas is able to meet those needs. I think both to an extent. I know right now from the last time I went into Ms. Zayas' home, she doesn't have a bed for Amaya currently, although that could be remediated pretty quickly by the department. Although emotionally, no, I don't think that she is stable at this time to meet Amaya's needs. Because if mom is not able to manage her own emotions, that in turn has shown to be stressful. And as a result of that stress, we could see Amaya decline in her own emotional stability, which she needs as an 8-year-old child. The issue of concern that mom had, she wasn't enrolled in the religious part or teachings at the school. Yes. And there was an agreed order that was circulated. And this was whenever Ms. Zayas had representation by Mr. Kim. And from what I remember, this was right around the time I became assigned in September of 2021. Mr. Kim never responded to that order to sign off on it. However, there was an email from Ms. Zayas indicating agreement for Amaya to attend the school. Yeah, I can remember reading a lot about this being an issue, especially during visits. And I still believe up to current day, it's something that that is being brought up as an issue during visits, because Amaya has remained adamant that she wants to go back to the school. And Miriam or Ms. Zayas has not really provided a reason to Amaya as to why she can't go back to the school, other than that she shouldn't have been at the school in the first place. I remember scheduling a meeting specifically to talk about how we would support Amaya in this transition, in which Ms. Zayas objected to attend. During the course of the school year, her last day was right before spring break started this year, 2022. I think that Amaya's near future is now. And I don't believe that at this current moment, Ms. Zayas is able to correct the deficiencies immediately, because she has been refusing to do any services that are necessary for her to correct the deficiencies, nor has she presented as making progress in correcting those deficiencies. Her response is that she did the services, but the department has continued to intervene, resulting in Amaya being removed. So what's the point in doing the services again? That's what she has said to me. She has also been pretty adamant that the services that we've been asking for her to do are not necessary. She does not believe that we are asking her to do services for any reason. No. Can you repeat that question? No, because I think that there would need to be a period of time to assess consistency when we've historically seen that Miss Dias will be making progress for a short period of time and then regress in making progress. I would say 6 to 9 months, different depending on their individual circumstances. I think that their developmental level, I feel like there's many factors that should be considered. So their development, their education, their individual needs. I think that Amaya needs to have a sense of, I think she needs to be reassured of where she's going to be. I think that Amaya has been stuck in a period of the unknown for too long. And she needs to know now where she's going to end up. And I think a lot of what plays into that is also the historical involvement and stress she has been through with the child welfare system, being that this is her second dependency. I think that the department would continue to try and implement the recommendations from the completed FCAP assessment. I think we would continue to make efforts to engage Ms. Dias in completing UAs, getting a new drug and alcohol assessment to determine if she is needing to enter any type of treatment. And then also follow through with the recommendations from the completed psychological evaluation.